to get started right away because there's too much to talk about. New folks, if you want a list of some of the things we're going to talk about, there are papers in the front here you're welcome to grab and keep. And we're just going to launch right on in. So welcome to the Horror Year in Review 2023. One cannot fit all of the horror into 1 hour, but we're going to do the best we can. Real quick, we're going to go through and introduce ourselves. We have discussions of movies we're going to talk about. We're going to have a general discussion. We will get to folks in the audience. It'll be more toward the second half of things. So when you're ready, I'll open it up and then you hold up the card. You all know how it goes, right? So great. Why don't we start on the left hand here. Why don't we start over here? Just give us your name, your affiliation, like why you're on the panel, and maybe a book or a title or movie, book, TV, podcast that you're most excited to talk about.
Okay, my name is Laabs. I've been on the Year Horror panel for a couple of years, avid horror fan. Primarily, I focus on the books and things that have come across in the published realm for horror. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. One of the things that I did read this year was called Little Eve by Katrina Ward. Fantastic book.
Hi, I'm Charlene. I have been speaking on horror at CONvergence since I first became a panelist a few years ago. My pronouns are Faith and Fair. I'm most excited to tell you all about the newest installment in the Bring It On series.
My name is Randee. I'll be moderating, and I'm an author and a journalist. I write for Variety and the LA Times, but I also have a short story in horror for The Throne, and this is my novel that came out last year in August called Tune In Tomorrow. It is about a reality TV show run by mythical creatures, for mythical creatures, but starring humans. It is not horrifying, it is hopefully funny. Both of these are available at FTP Publications in the dealer's room.
Hello everyone, I am Jason, aka The Vern. I am one of the hosts of Cinema Recall podcast, and we cover movie reviews, horror films. We've done radio adaptations of Dawn of the Dead and Plan 9 from Outer Space, which was a totally fun thing to do. It's my first time actually being on a horror panel, and I'm very honored to actually be on the Year in Horror panel today, so thank you.
Hi, and I'm Skazka. I'm going to be on a couple other horror panels. I think Friday and Saturday I'm going to be on Retro Horror Retrospective and Fear You Can Hear, which is dedicated to horror in the audio format. Which
yes, we're both on that one.
I was going to say, listen, hat up to the bird. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. And as a horror person, I had to choose whether I was going to change into one of my multiple commemorative The Black Phone t-shirts today. So I wore neither because it felt a little weird, but I really enjoyed that. But I've been trying to fill in the gaps of stuff I was too scared to see in theaters because I'm not a big theater goer for horror film for various reasons because I'm a big weenie if I fill in the gaps.
And I forgot to mention the movie I'm saying to talk about is Pearl. Yeah.
Great, so what we're going to do is before we all met today, we talked through emails and we came up with a couple of movies from the past year that most of us have seen or most of us can talk about. So we're going to go through that list first. And I want to start off with the menu. Why don't we start on this other side and just work our way down. If you don't have anything to say, it's totally cool.
See, I liked the horror parts of the menu, or kind of the more dark satire parts of it, more than the execution of the satire in general, which is, I'm going to be talking about another kind of horror satire later that also kind of caught me off guard by being more satirical than horror, but I have to pass the hat on that one because I wasn't a huge fan of the menu.
All right, okay. So the menu, if you haven't seen it before, it deals with all of these rich socialite people, influencers and whatnot, and they are going to this restaurant that's hosted by Ray Fiennes. And you got Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Holt. Yes. They're a couple, and he's really into like food culture. He's always telling her like, well, this restaurant is so great, and this guy makes all the best food. And then there's like a group of like business associates there, and each course that Ray Fine introduces gets more and more insane, and it's definitely like a satire and poking fun at rich culture, very much like Triangle of Sadness did as well, that was like nominated for Best Picture, but I thought the menu really tapped into that satire of making fun of rich culture and rich socialites better than that movie did. And it just gets more and more insane each course. Someone gets killed in there, and Anya Taylor-Joy plays a woman that is not really into the whole thing. It just becomes more and more insane as it goes on, and I just love the ending of it. I thought it was great.
Before we move on, just FYI, there's a chance that there'll be some spoilers, so if you think you're dropping a big spoiler, I'm mentioning it, but
I couldn't wait.
to be warned in this room. Do you want to go?
Yep. So as a person who works in theater, it felt really great to me to be able to see a different version of the same execution that I could very easily see happen. That it speaks very well to how the arts, the beauty of an art, can be corrupted by money, by fame, by socialites, and whatever. And it's so cathartic to be able to watch that get torn down by people who don't want to do it anymore.
I loved it. I thought it was my favorite horror movie of the year. Can't say enough good things about it.
I think one thing that is interesting to point out about the menu, and then we'll move on, is that I don't think we get to see a whole lot of real horror movies that actually have real substance, that actually have A-list actors in it. Usually the A-list actors are steering away from it, or they become A-list actors many years later. And I think that almost made this a bit of a Trojan horse. People maybe went in and said, oh, Ray Fiennes, the chef. That'll be fun. Yeah. And the girl from the chess movie. You know. All right, great. So why don't we start on the opposite side with Megan, or Mathregan.
I thought this was a very funny movie. I could see the exact moments in it where it could have gone to R, and instead it went to PG, because I saw the potential in this one. I don't know how scary it was, but I think it had that dead doll stare of the eyes. Worked for me, so I enjoyed it a lot.
I really like the conversations that it brings up about becoming a parent when you don't expect to become one. And I really like, my immediate thought after was like, how can we get her to fight Chucky? Like, in what context can she and will she fight Chucky? I want to see it. I want to see that now.
So I thought Megan was better remake of Child's Play than the 2018 Child's Play. What I really love the best about it is that it talks about how a lot of parents use artificial intelligence toys to parent the kid, because the aunt of the little girl, she kind of uses that tool and toy to pass out any parental rights that she should have done herself to this doll. And this little girl becomes just so infused with the doll, and they have such a connection that trying to break it up would just seem horrific to this little girl. And I love it because, and this is not a spoiler, you should know this by the trailer, the little girl loses her parents in a huge car accident, and her aunt really wants nothing to do with the kids. She just kind of lost contact with her sister throughout the years, and now she has this little girl she has to take care of, doesn't know what to do, so she creates this new doll that in a way replaces all the parental responsibilities that she should have done herself. And I just found it to be absolutely great. From the very first commercial trailer that they used in this, I thought, okay, I know exactly what tone you're going for, and all the way through, it was absolutely great.
I freaking love doll horror. Yeah, so it's very hard for me to try and be objective. Even, I would say, I'll handle really schlocky doll horror. I just really enjoy it, but I felt like Mathregan, which it will always be to me. Yeah. Managed to really kind of thread the needle on both being like PG-13, not super like I wouldn't be horrified to watch it with my parents, though my parents would hate it. Kind of something where it's like, this is approachable, this is really watchable, this is really funny, but at the same time it's kind of digging into some of the stuff that especially like doll horror and kind of the science fiction wing of horror and genre fiction do really well. And I want to say the screenwriter also wrote *Malignant*, which I did.
Oh, yes!
I did not like as much as
Oh, wow, that makes sense now.
Oh yeah, I'm like the horror comedy aspect and the balance there is really something that I'm really enjoying seeing, and I think that's something that both of those movies, like kind of pure gonzo kind of horror comedy, is a blast, and I enjoyed that aspect of both.
And I also appreciate, that, by the way, newcomers, we do have a list up here of some of the things we're talking about, if you want to grab your own copy. I also think that it's interesting that Allison Williams has gone from Girls to kind of finding this really interesting niche in great horror movies. She was in Get Out, and then she's in The Three. So,
and The Perfection on Netflix.
there you go, and The Perfection. So there you go. Yeah, she's kind of got this little mini career going on that I hadn't expected to see out of her. Right, so let's start with the black phone. Anne, why don't you start on this one, and then we'll...
Well, I think that was the winner of I think it was a tie, but the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards winner. I enjoyed it. I don't know if it's my favorite of the year, but it's a solid vengeful ghost story, and it worked for me on that level. So.
Okay, skip that one.
Okay.
Okay. I did enjoy the Black Phone. I liked it mainly because of the two child actors in that movie. Ethan Hawke was good as the villain, but it was the two actors, and I had to look. I'm trying to look up right now who the actors are because I don't know if they're new.
Mason Thames and Maddie McGraw, I think is the girl. I may be wrong. I've overshot.
Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw.
Yes. Fantastic. And a really fun book.
Oh, wait, I gotta say, from Scott Derrickson, who also did Sinister. And that was another great horror film that he did, as well as The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I enjoyed very much. So yeah, did a good job with that.
I really loved The Black Phone, and I think a big part of that was that I was surprised to enjoy it as much as I did, because I didn't really enjoy Scott Derrickson's other work. It isn't really my speed, and especially kind of the poster campaign for this is a little bit like, well, what about this is scary other than they have a really gnarly mask design, which ends up being, oh god, it's almost worse when it's not on him, which is an impressive thing for kind of a horror villain mask to achieve, but I really enjoyed that as kind of both a vengeful ghost story and a story about kind of childhood and growing up and about the kind of the wounds that you incur in childhood, which is something I will always like about movies with, I love creepy dolls and I love kid ghosts. And the entire kind of ensemble cast are very young actors playing kind of no spoilers here, the serial killer's other victims. Really, really terrific kind of young cast, but also really enjoyable. Kind of how do you have these characters communicating via the device of, you're only able to communicate with each other via this telephone. He can see them, but he can't necessarily connect with them in any other way. How do you film that? And they ended up achieving that in a really, really kind of fun behind the scenes way.
And also Ethan Hawke, another A-list actor, taking the lead here. I think it adds a bit of, I don't like to say that horror is not legitimate, but I think that we're all kind of used to horror being considered, schlocky or second rate or B, all of which can be enjoyable. But seeing bigger actors taking on these parts, I think it elevates things a bit, which is interesting.
And the way they try to bring tension up in that movie, especially at the end when he uses his tools to get away from the bad guy, I thought it was like one of the best shot sequences ever this year. The way that he's able to use his tools and everything to escape. I absolutely loved it.
Okay, Nope. Charlene, why don't you start on this one?
Sure, I love Nope. I usually don't like big creature films. I usually don't like alien films, but there's something about this one and the way that it decided to take like the perception of being watched, the feeling of being hunter or hunted, and the theme of whether or not you can control a wild animal, and then the greater metaphor of our involvement in media. Whoa,
Yeah.
And also some of the cinematography, like, golly, God, I want to paint one of those scenes where it's just rain, and it's so gross. I love it.
You know, for Jordan Peele's movies are always an interesting journey, so they're worth seeing. And you wouldn't think that the sight of a shoe standing still would be so scary, but it was. And I love the relationship between the siblings. They had a real vibe that I could believe they were brother and sister. They were fantastic, and the reactions to the circumstances they found themselves in.
Also before, I almost got over my fear of horses. Before, no.
Nope.
Did not work. It's back.
What about on this side of things? You guys want to comment?
That movie made me scared of things I've never been scared of before. I watched that, I think even literally just hearing about the stuff in that with Gordy's Home, there's an ape incident in that
Yes.
movie on the set of a sitcom, which is both really, really memorably grisly and impactful without necessarily, the aspect of suspense and you know what's happening but you don't necessarily see it, and that's almost worse, is really potent in that film. But I also want to give a shout out to the incredibly stacked cast, both in terms of, even with Keith David is in this movie, Michael Wincott, who I've seen in many things, but many people will know as the villain from The Crow. Just like really, really enjoyable cast of performers, including in roles that it would be really easy to kind of not put that much juice into.
Okay,
I'll be honest here, this is a movie that I will need to watch again, because when I saw it in theaters, I loved the parts with the monkey, and I wanted that to be the whole entire movie. And I don't know what it was, but I did not so much like them trying to find the alien, because it drifted away from horror to being sci-fi, which is fine. But I wanted that to be a small element, and I wanted the scene with the monkey to be a lot longer, and that's just my strange mind, so.
okay, we don't want to get too far behind or anything, so we'll go a little quicker with the other three in this first part. Prey, who has something they want to say about Prey?
I freaking loved it, and early on, before the panel began, I jokingly described it as like, oh, it's not a horror movie, it's a triumph of the human spirit. But that movie gets me really into, especially with kind of trying to take the Predator franchise and explore that in a new kind of historical location. You're dealing with a totally different set of technology and a totally different set of like survival skills, and it really kind of raises the stakes for me in a very enjoyable way. And that's something I'd love to see, especially kind of new installments of pre-existing horror franchises splash out a little bit more in, kind of digging into both settings that don't get a lot of play and character types who don't get to be the protagonists as often as they should.
Yes.
Charlene, you also had something to say.
Yeah, I fully agree. And also, if you've already seen it, if you have the opportunity to on Netflix, you should watch it in like the indigenous languages, because like that's the first way that I experienced it. And there is something significantly different about being able to hear people speak in their own language, and also not feeling like, you feel a lot more connected to the protagonist when they get to speak in their own tongue. And they're going through all of the same struggles that we've seen in different Predator movies before.
Okay.
I wasn't sure, was it originally shot in the other language, or was it shot in English first and then later dubbed into the other language? Because I thought it was shot in English, was English-speaking actors, then later redubbed into Comanche language.
Well, the lip flaps didn't look different to me, and I haven't seen it in English, so.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Pearl, which I know Jason has something else to say about.
Well, Pearl is the prequel to X, and I'll get into later here. But Pearl stars Mia Goth as this woman who really wants to become a Broadway star. She wants to become a dancer and singer, and she gets the chance to sing for this traveling show that's happening. The only downside is that she is a psychopath, and she does kill animals and very deranged lady. But my gosh, you feel so much for this woman when watching the film that I was blown away. There was like that 10-minute monologue that she gives that when I saw it in theaters, everyone was just stone silent. And you cry. First time ever in a horror film, I'm like crying for hearing this girl's pain about her husband that went away, left her all alone, and being away in the war, and her being pregnant and losing the kid. Oh, just so heart-wrenching. And yet it's a very gory horror film, and it's shot in daylight, very much like Midsummer was shot in daylight. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Charlene?
Is it okay if I look them both together?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's do that.
Absolutely. I would say that for Pearl specifically, that I was not expecting to be so heartbroken and sad. And that, like, my framing of it was that this poor woman was trapped on this farmhouse, that she's been wanting to escape for so long that it drove her crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that she needed some way to reclaim her power and she just couldn't. And then we move on to X, which is decades later, and she's still going through the same problems because she's still there. And she's playing the old version of herself and then also a separate character. And it's like the relationship between young and old and the loss of your dreams and whether or not you can actually achieve your dreams. And I never thought that I would see somebody play Landslide in a horror movie and it would legitimately make me want to cry. That was so sad.
Right. Jason, did you want add anything about X?
Only thing I'll say about X is that it's the Wizard of Oz on acid. Is the best way to describe it, because from the opening shots, you're looking at this film, there's how like X is a tribute to 70s grindhouse horror films. Pearl is a tribute to 1950s melodramas, like Douglas Sirk's melodrama, but with a lot of like blood splashed on camera.
That's so freaking fun. That makes me, oh my gosh.
So what we're going to do for the next batch, for the discussion to the discussion room, we have a whole bunch of films. What I'm going to ask everybody in the row to do is we're just going to go up and down and give us like one sentence, 2 sentences tops. Just immediately going to be quick hits, because we don't want to get too far behind. So, and why don't we start Skinamarink?
I'll have to skip, I think.
That's fine. Anybody else for Skinamarink?
Skinamarink, okay, so picture this, folks. I want you to look up at the ceiling. Do this for about 5 minutes, and then hear this. And then look over to your wall for another like 5 minutes. Oh my God, there's no one else here. What am I gonna do? And then
It's a Skinamarink simulator.
that's the whole movie. All right.
I really enjoyed that film as kind of a dreamlike experience, but it felt like it was often, people were acting like it was their first time ever seeing a horror film, and their first time kind of like, wait a minute, oh my God, they used sound, they used surprises, and it's like, yes, a horror film should do all of these things.
It was divisive, I think, like the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, yeah.
You either love it or you hate it. Halloween ends.
I'm happy it ended.
There you go. And Jamie Lee Curtis has an husband. Right, Hellraiser. Who's got a Hellraiser?
Oh God, this is almost a classic Hellraiser experience. I didn't care for the the Hellraiser remake too much, except for the Hell Priest.
Yes.
Which is the fact that it's like, oh yeah, but Pinhead was great. I'm like, I think that was many people's takeaway from the OG film, but just really, really enjoyable to see kind of an aspect of the original Clive Barker story that isn't really carried over into that, I think it's 1987 film, drawn out kind of some of the elements of kind of both gender and delicacy that character has, that is really, really fun to see brought out, but also fun.
Sorry, we got to just keep it brief here.
Yeah.
Do you want something to add to that?
Jamie Clayton, excellent story, not that great.
Okay, anyone on this side? Okay, we already talked about Prey, so we'll take that out. Evil Dead Rise, who's got something on that? Anyone like?
None.
I still haven't seen that one because I'm too damn scared, but there have been a lot of really excellent horror films this year with both trans actors in the cast and trans characters. Evil Dead Rise has both, and I'm too scared to watch.
Okay. The Pale Blue Eye, which is sort of horror-ish. I'm not sure how it ended on this list, but
That may have been my fault. I found it horror adjacent. It's trying to be macabre, I guess, in tone, dealing with kind of the Edgar Allan Poe connection. Could have been a little bit more ball to the wall.
Yeah, Poe is a character in
Yes, yes.
and Christian Bale is the main character, and it's very dark.
Okay, it had a not satisfying ending.
I don't know this one very well. Is it Enos Men or Ennis Men? E-N-Y-S Men. How did that get
It's
on?
Edison. It's folk horror, yet more folk horror, which is really having a moment right now. I'm very into it, but it made a very weird back-to-back feature with it's Edison Men and then just the movie Men, which is also folk horror of a very different stripe.
Anyone else on Ennis Men? Okay, Terrifier 2.
Terrifier 2.
I know this is a movie I cannot.
Yes, it is a very
Sorry.
gory horror film about Art the Clown. And Art the Clown is make Pennywise just look like a scared little child. Because this guy just does the most horrific stuff. But if you're a fan of like practical effects in horror film, it is great because some of the makeup effects they do is just great. The guy who plays Art the Clown, he's terrifying and yet he's funny in a lot of ways. But some moments you watch like, you have to have a very strong threshold for gore to handle Terrifier 2 and the Terrifier 1.
Okay, Infinity Pool.
Okay, so this is the latest film from Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg. And Infinity Pool is about this couple and they're on vacation. And while on vacation, they accidentally kill someone. The government gives the guy who kills the person a choice, like either you can go to jail for so many years, or if you pay a lot of money, we'll have a clone of yourself be made, and that person can be killed
So
in your place.
is it Woodstein rather than someone else?
Oh, sorry. Yes, if you enjoy Twisted Tales, Brandon Cronenberg does like a lot of crazy films. It definitely follows his dad's style right there.
Yeah, he's got body horror like Dad interests. Kids versus Aliens.
Alright, that's what I picture right there. Kids vs. Aliens is a great homage to 80s sci-fi films.
Sissy.
I still haven't gotten to see this one, but I'm really hyped for more kind of female-led revenge films that are dealing about relationships that don't necessarily involve dudes.
The Black Phone is on here for some reason. We already did that one. Someone mentioned Possession 1981, which is obviously not new, but is new to Shudder.
Yes. Really briefly, deals with the couple getting a divorce. It's like, okay, so for people 30 and over, it's Kramer versus Kramer done by H.P. Lovecraft. And people younger, it's Marriage Story if done by H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay. Anyone else on the panel for that? Knock at the Cabin Door, isn't it? Knock at the
Knock at the Cabin.
Okay.
Yeah, Knock at the Cabin, based on the book by Paul Tremblay, right?
Yes, I highly recommend it. I love the book. I thought Shyamalan did a great job
Okay.
adapting it.
Anyone else in the panel? I liked it better than the book, frankly. The book, I have issues with the book and the book's ending. For what it's worth, the book, the movie ends differently than the book. This is not a huge surprise if you watch any movies that are made based on books. Let's see. Deadstream, also something from Shudder. Who else? Who's got some on that?
I have not seen it.
All right. Barbarian. I have your name next to that.
I loved it. That movie was fantastic. It was halfway through it. What am I watching? I don't know, but I love it.
Something in the Dirt.
I didn't have a chance to see that yet. I'm going to watch it because it's by the same people who did The Endless, which is also highly recommended. So I'm going to get it on my list. You should watch it.
Okay. Violent Night.
Violent Night is
Oh, yeah.
very toward the comedy side,
Yeah.
kind of
Yes.
horror action comedy. But I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed seeing David Harbour get to do Die Hard, but extra Christmassy.
And Chekhov's Candy Cane.
Yes.
I like that. Also a punk band.
Yeah.
Swarm.
That's me.
There you go.
Swarm is a mini-series about a girl who is kind of obsessed with the show's analog of Beyonce. But it's actually about a girl who is lost in the system and ends up like developing a mental illness that causes her to enact violence on people who she deems does not like Beyonce. It's amazing.
Is it on Amazon, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have another one? Okay.
I mean, I think it's amazing.
Okay.
It's heart-wrenching by the second to last episode, as it switches to a mockumentary about all of her background, but the time leading up to it is just like, oh God, she's gonna kill this person.
How is she going to do it? And the blackening.
That's also me.
Okay.
So the Blackening is a black casted horror movie about a bunch of people who rent a cabin and they find a board game that is super racist and they decide to play it anyway. And then somebody starts hunting them and then they have to try to vote to see who is the most black so that that person dies first. So it's like a make it out comedy. It's actually very funny. Yeah, and it doesn't take itself too seriously.
I've heard excellent things.
Yeah.
It is so good. It's also based off of a sketch if you want to see the sketch on YouTube.
Oh.
Anyone else in the panel wants to? Okay.
Well, I'll mention one more thing. Possession does star Jurassic Park's Sam Neill. So got some movies on that.
Bring it on, cheer or die.
This one is, I think that Charlene's going to have good stuff to say about this, but I want more movie franchises to take a turn for horror. On like the third movie, I'm like, I want to get surprised.
Yeah.
So if anybody who's unaware of Bring It On started off being a movie about cheerleading. It talked very intelligently for the 90s about race. This is not that at all. This is a very, very stupid movie in which they get locked into a place and hunted for sport. And they punch somebody in the face using a back handspring back tuck. It is so stupid. It is so stupid. And I want everybody to see it. It's not even scary in the least. I've seen better props from y'all, and we're like making them at home. It's so bad. You need to watch it.
So bad it's good.
The whole party up on 5 where they're doing bad movies, so maybe for next year we'll be there.
Bring 5 more films?
Yeah.
Wow, that would be all in.
So Black Mirror, we obviously is a TV series. Has anyone seen some of the new ones? We all know about the previous seasons.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first one, We Hate Jamie, or I Hate Jamie, or the first episode.
Jonah's off.
Jonah's off.
Jonas off.
Joe's off, thank you. That's the best one.
Okay. How do you feel about the series? I haven't seen the new season yet, so how do you feel about the series as a whole this season compared to others?
I feel like the newest season has regained its footing as a show. I think it is still not Black Mirror, but it is good.
Okay.
Like it feels like a completely different thing, potentially because they have taken it back to a more analog space than it was previously. Like instead of dealing with future tech for most of them, we're dealing with like, oh, somebody's using a camera, somebody's using their phone. It's Netflix, it's Streamberry or whatever, but it's still good-ish, except for
I do think Black Mirror, having gotten to catch up in the new series, but being able to do that kind of weird mix of sci-fi horror and then suddenly you get punched in the throat with emotions is something that I do think is a strength. I hope they keep that up.
Bodies.
This is one of the ones where I was like, I watched it and I was like, awesome, horror. And I'm like, that's kind of almost more of a straight up black comedy. And that is not a knock on it by any means. I feel like it does a lot of stuff with kind of the spending the night in an old spooky rich person's house and the power goes out and there's a killer among you kind of energy, but using that to explore interpersonal relationships and a whole bunch of young people who are terrible at articulating what's going on with that.
Anyone else in the lineup?
Yeah, I would say that it's a good starter movie for somebody if they're trying to first get introduced to an ending that just kind of drops out. Like, it didn't hurt my feelings because I've seen movies that drop right out from under you a lot. But if somebody was going to do it for the first time, I think that would be a good starter.
Okay.
Then I get to see Pete Davidson do something that I never get to see Pete Davidson do. So.
And Yellow Jackets.
I'm a huge.
Oh, tell me about, I have no idea about this show.
I love this show.
This is on Showtime, correct?
I subscribed to Showtime just to watch it and canceled it the day after. It's fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it, and everyone should watch it.
I really love it in terms of horror of double timelines. It does something that I think reminds me a little bit of the books of Megan Abbott. If you read her kind of thriller and kind of horror adjacent work, where you're dealing with one timeline that's in the 1990s with these girls who've been stranded in the wilderness on a extremely failed sports team trip, and then in the present day dealing with cults and trauma and all this fucked up stuff. There's no children in here. All this fucked up stuff is happening, which I think that most people favor one timeline over the other. I'm definitely enjoying kind of the young actors in the cast, but it does something really interesting with a whole ton of interpersonal dynamics that get pretty ugly.
All right, plus, there's some cannibalism, so there you go.
Listen, I have my cannibalism lanyard today. I need to get a Yellow Jackets pin.
So we're going to move into just some general topics that I wanted to touch on. And again, if you don't have anything you want to specifically say for this, that's totally cool. Any thoughts on the franchise installments of movies, the Halloween Ends, the Hellraiser, the Prey, the Evil Dead Rise, the way those are continuing? And that's kind of the tradition of Holm, yeah?
I feel like we've seen the good this year and the very bad.
Yeah.
Kind of both ways to kind of get back to the core of the franchise in a way that still feels fresh, ways to kind of do that homage energy, and then also ways where it just feels like, oh my god, there's another one of these, which is how I feel like I don't have a great relationship to the latest slew of Halloween films.
See, I liked Halloween 2018. I thought that was a great continuation of that series. It did something new. It changed around Laurie Strode's character, and it was a perfect ending. That first one, just when they're driving away, just the perfect ending of that movie. And then Halloween Kills comes out. Evil must die tonight. Evil dies tonight. That whole thing just didn't work out, and I did not like Halloween Ends when they tried to introduce a new Michael Myers with the Corey character. I thought if his character was established in the second movie or the first movie, then the third would make sense, but it's just
Anyone else in that here? Franchise related stuff?
I think for movies like Prey, I think we can see that when we add in different perspectives, that we can grow franchises into being something that's really beautiful. I think the lack thereof of trying to just pass the mantle is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've gotten oversaturated on that. There's other genre media like Werewolf by Night. This is not something I'm familiar with. Does anyone know where
that
this
is
comes from?
the show on Disney Plus.
It is
Go.
I was going to say, it is a kind of continuation of the whole Disney era, Marvel, god damn. Really firing on all cylinders today. Kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe on TV, kind of the same strain as Moon Knight, and kind of exploring aspects of the comics that are not necessarily in the mainline MCU, but it is in the style of a schlocky, black and white, extremely
It's
not tongue-in-cheek, kind of 70s style horror. Everybody locked in a big old spooky house with a big old spooky garden, trying to figure out which one of them is the werewolf and kill it.
See, I think more like 1950s style.
Oh yeah.
Universal monster horror film.
Okay. There are 3 documentaries that came out that are horror related. I'm just going to mention the names and we'll move on. Queer for Fear, Woodlands Dark, and Days Bewitched. Do we all agree that those are worth looking at?
Woodlands Dark
Starting
and Days
Days
Bewitched.
Bewitched is one title.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Woodlands Dark, Days Bewitched. That's all that title.
On folklore, and particularly the English folklore tradition.
And where can you see it?
It is on Shudder.
I believe they're both on Shudder.
Yeah.
Both on Shudder. Queer for
Queer for
Fear, and then Woodlands Dark, Days Bewitched. There are podcasts that people wanted to mention. Podcast in the Woods.
Podcast in the Woods is hosted by my good buddies, Boomer and Gabby, and they just go through a whole list of horror films. It's great because he'll introduce her to horror films that she's never seen before and vice versa.
Good. late night L8 night ghouls, and then pretty
Well-
H machine.
So Pretty Eight Machine's one of the hosts of.
Oh, that one of the hosts. Okay, that was not made clear. Okay, great.
Two women podcasters, and they do a good job of talking about things that were problematic in horror films, and they address issues, and it's great. Wonderful friends of mine.
Okay, and I know that could be a topic all by itself, but we're short on time, so just real quick, if you guys have things you want to say about LGBTQ plus characters and artists in recent horror, thoughts?
I'm for them. Also, specifically, I'm really enjoying getting to see LGBTQ characters and actors in films that are not necessarily centered on that aspect of their experience.
Yeah.
I think especially with The Last of Us and also with Bodies, we have a couple instances where it's trans and non-binary actors playing characters who aren't necessarily trans and non-binary. And I think that's kind of a fun thing to see and see their perspectives on that as performers.
Yeah.
Anyone else here?
I think it adds a layer of depth to them that we haven't gotten to see overtly in horror before. I really like that.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be the thing that kills you off.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there are plenty of YouTube shows and shorts that are out there. Alter is a great channel for horror. If you like short horror, that's on YouTube. I think they also have a dedicated channel of their own. And Amuletto is also a channel on YouTube. It has a bunch of different genres, including horror, and those are good shorts. Were there any other YouTube shows you just want to quickly mention?
I'll mention the podcast here, Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th?
Friday the 13th, yes.
Okay.
Was by two gay individuals who do talk about horror films, and they do bring in the gay aspects, and it's really great intellectual conversation they have.
Cool. So we're about to get to the audience, but I want to give everybody on the panel, and then we're going to make it 1 minute, instead of 2 minutes. I'm sorry to say we're short on time. Each panelist just give us 1 minute of whatever titles, territory, topics that we haven't already covered that you want to make sure people are hearing about from the year in horror. Who wants to start?
I will say this has been a big year for, especially on YouTube, kind of analog horror that's deliberately aping the style of, an old creepy VHS tape that you found, or a broadcast on television that you kind of murkily remember from childhood. Skinamarink was kind of a lot of people's first brush with that in the theater, but there's a lot of very cool stuff happening in that arena on YouTube right now, where there's actually because it's so easy to film something on your phone and then edit it on your phone and then post it to YouTube. There's a pretty low barrier of entry for a lot of really interesting filmmakers working in that kind of horror genre.
Is that the same thing of we all gone to the Wilkes Fair? Is that?
Oh God, I will say that's adjacent to that. I would say. I'm trying to think of.
I'm actually thinking that all the Grimace stuff that's going on.
Oh yeah.
The Grimace weird movies that are TikToks that are coming out. But it falls into that area with the found footage and all of that.
McDonald's Grimace?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta look up the Grimace films on TikTok.
Oh, okay,
yes.
perfect.
Anyway, so I'm sorry, you're okay?
Yes, I'm good.
And,
That was kind of bounced off of that.
okay, Charlene?
I just want to emphasize the fact that in this past year, a lot of really good horror starring and about the Black experience have come out in the past year. And we do love that. But also that, these can also really fly under the radar. I got to see The Blackening before, at a screening before it actually came out. And then I also heard nothing about it. I heard nobody talking about it. I heard almost nobody outside of my own personal circle talk about Swarm or any of the other movies that I know are Black, that talk about the Black experience outside of Nope. And I don't know, when we introduce race into the fabric of the character as opposed to just there's a Black person there, there's an Asian person there, there's a Native person there, it changes the whole thing, and we have to seek these out because they're not giving it to us and telling us.
Okay. I will just say that I worked off Barnes & Noble's Best Horror of 2022. I made it a goal to read as many of them as I could. The highlight of it, as I mentioned, was Little Eve by Catriona Ward. The Hollow Kind, 2 new ones that I'm looking forward to reading very much. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. She wrote Mexican Gothic. I have her other novels. I can't wait to dig into them. This one just won the Locus Award for Best Horror Novel, What Moves the Dead. And this is one I got just because I heard so much buzz about it. Can't wait to read it. I go by Barnes & Noble, so if there's Locus, if there's a source that you trust, there's so much coming out that see who you trust and what sources have given you good references in the past. And for me, that's Barnes & Noble Best Horror. Doesn't mean it's all that's out there, but it helps focus on stuff I can get through in the coming year. So.
And I would say if you're looking for more things for yourself, there's a great podcast called Pseudopod. Does short stories, horror stories, once a week. That always is good. And if you're looking for other stuff that you might not have found otherwise, the Stoker Awards are put together by the Horror Writers Association, and they have a lot of good suggestions for short stories and fiction. Excuse me. It's very dry. Right, so let's hear from the audience a little bit. Who here has something we missed, something you want to comment on? If you have a card next to you and you can hold it up, that's the best way to do this. Blue card, right here.
Where is your take on The Last of Us?
The Last of Us. What do we think about The Last of Us?
I really loved the video game, and I cried so hard at the video game when playing that. And then when I saw the first episode of the TV show, I thought they kind of, I felt like they rushed things a little bit. And I felt like the first episode of the show should have been him with his daughter and that build a relationship with that, and it should have ended with her death. And that's how the first episode should have done. I need to watch more of it because people say, oh, it gets better, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. Anyone else up here? Okay, I freaking loved it. I did not play the video game. I know that it's there. I love Pedro Pascal. He can do anything. You have to watch him do those things. I loved it. The standalone, more or less standalone model episode with Nick Offerman and Matt, what's his name, from The White Lotus, was perfect. And if it doesn't win an Emmy, I will cry. I really liked it. I don't think you have to have seen the game because it was very effective. Need somebody else? I think you had an orange. The orange on the right.
We talked about what the best was, but what's your worst for the year?
Everyone?
Skinamarink. Yeah.
I mean, my actual worst, not like worst good, is Mr. Harrigan's phone. Like, I love, ew. I love Stephen King, I love his work. It's just like, a lot of it should not be adapted. I feel like that one should have stayed as a story. It feels better when it lives in my mind where I can like imagine things. It's so slow paced that it's not fun.
For me, Brooklyn 45, which is on Shudder, it's not the worst. It's a really good ghost story that's undone by not a good ending. Ghost stories don't have to be the most tightly structured things, but this ending left me, it didn't work with the rest, and it was a bit of a disappointment. But it's worth watching, even though I didn't like the ending.
On this side?
I'm a Barbarian hater.
Oh.
I hated that movie. I was really enjoying it, really kind of like, oh my god, where is this going? What's happening? Until we get to one of several reveals where it immediately kind of really hit me in a sour way. So that was a film where I was really willing to give it a lot of latitude, and then it ended up taking a direction that I don't super love in horror. It reminded me a lot of the 2016 Fede Alvarez movie Don't Breathe, which also takes a, let's say, sexual violence filled turn at a certain point that I don't really enjoy when it's not. I didn't particularly care for how that was borne out in Barbarian.
Jason?
I said Skinamarink.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you did, right, okay. Skinamarink is one of those films that I'm too scared to see.
Yeah, and if you're afraid of the dark, yes, I totally understand why you would be afraid of that movie.
It will make you scared of a Fisher-Price toy phone.
I let's see some of those reveals. We have an orange card over here as well.
Yeah, apologies if this was done, we did come in late, but reactions to Renfield.
Oh,
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun.
All right, thoughts, guys?
Yeah, Nicolas Cage, great. Great. So much fun. There was so many surprises that happened in that movie. It's a really great take on the Dracula mythos. And I love the fact that Nicholas Hoult plays a guy who's been tortured by Dracula, where he feels that he has to join the support group. And pretty brilliant.
Can I say for Renfield, my husband doesn't like horror, but we went to go see it, and it was so comedic that he enjoyed it. So.
No?
I mean, no, I didn't. Well, okay, I love it as a Nicolas Cage movie. If it were just, if we lifted out the cop head, and if we lifted out the propaganda, then I think it would be a perfect movie. But it's just like, if you're like, oh, these two people are right next to each other, they're of opposite genders, and they're out. I'm out. I don't like it anymore. And also, like, her storyline, the love interest being like, I'm a cop who's trying to do the right thing. Like, I'm bored. I've seen it, and I don't believe it.
I agree with that aspect of it. Yeah, the scene with the cops can go away.
Yellow card in the back.
Sure. I wanted to give 2 podcast recommendations you guys had mentioned, but I also wanted to touch on what Charlene mentioned with the Stephen King adaptations. Mike Flanagan is one of my favorite directors. He's working on his 3rd Stephen King adaptation. It's going to be coming out soon. It's a short story I've not heard of, but I'm excited for it. I have a lot of faith in his
Which one?
I have to look it up. It's on IMDb, but it's going to be coming out after Fall of the House of Usher that he's working on right now.
Mike Flanagan, you said,
Mike
right?
Flanagan, he did Hush, Gerald's Game, the Doctor Sleep, Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. Amazing. I really like the way he uses ghosts to represent grief and loss and love and tackle these big issues through these traditional figures. But for the podcast, Too Scary Didn't Watch is a really good one. It's friends who started off all afraid to watch scary movies. One of them would be brave to watch a scary movie and then recap it for the other 2. And they've grown over time to become horror movie fans. That one's really cute. And then Dead Meat Podcast, I mentioned to somebody else up there. Amazing podcast by people who work at the industry. They also have a YouTube channel. They've had Heather Langenkamp on as a special guest. Who like Heather Langenkamp in the Freddy series. It's a very good podcast. Very good YouTube series.
That's Too Scary, Didn't Watch, and Dead Meat, both podcasts. Right here.
Okay, so to go off of what you were saying about, my husband also does like what I love horror movies, really want to watch it for different reasons. In your own opinion, what's a good, I have so many friends that do not watch horror, and I cannot get them to watch any horror. Is there, in your opinion, a good horror movie for people who've never seen horror or don't like horror that you have there?
Gateway horror film, that's what we recommend.
Oh, that's a tough one, especially for this last. I felt like I was so excited to have a Mike Flanagan tie-in, and then I realized Midnight Mass was 2021.
That's really from this past year. It'd be like a long time.
I would say if they're one of the few people who haven't watched Stranger Things. That's a good gateway.
I will say that, especially with works that are kind of homage heavy, like Stranger Things, it's also a great way to be like, hey, do you want to know what that part was referencing? You backdoor somebody into like watching The Thing or watching Hellraiser because they like Stranger Things, which is a not very nice thing that a person could do, but it's also a great way to get kind of that engagement of giving people like a little taster course of stuff that they might like, especially in vintage horror.
I would go back as far as to say, show them Poltergeist.
Yes.
Ignore the other ones. Poltergeist is a good gateway.
Yeah, I would say the original Night of the Living Dead. Like, that one's gentle, the horror's not that bad.
Lady in White
Yes.
is a really good ghost story, and it's scary, but not gory. It's something that you can definitely show people that will scare them, but it won't push them out.
For me as a ghost story person especially, I think ghost stories are kind of a way in because there's not necessarily, you can get really good scares without necessarily showing somebody get, let's say, hit in the face with an axe, which definitely, that happens in the Black Phone, that happens in a ghost story, but not to a ghost. But The Innocents from 1960. What? Yeah, it's real old school, but it is also really unsettling and fresh in a way that has gotten some people in my life kind of hooked on horror.
Avoid the Turning, the remake. That
Oh,
came
yeah.
out. Don't see that, but see the Innocents.
Okay. We have an orange card here.
There is a Mike Flanagan from this year, it's the Midnight Club.
Oh, damn!
Midnight Club by Flanagan from this year.
I have not caught that one, but as a fan of like 80s and 90s young adult horror and thriller series, I'm really glad that especially that and Fear Street, we're getting
Oh
some.
my God, yes, they love
Yeah.
great children.
Midnight Club is both the Midnight Club and
All the
several
other
other Christopher Pike books.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another Flanagan produced. He didn't direct it, but he produced it.
Oh, oh, that whips.
So who else do we have? We have room for a couple more questions. Orange right here. Now we do blue.
I'm pretty sure it was from this year, but did anyone see Treevenge?
Treevenge.
It
I like the
was a
title.
Short film on YouTube. It's like 20 minutes, give or take, and it's literally what you think. It's a Christmas tree getting revenge for all of its little tree buddies being cut down.
I think that needs to be paired up with the life and death of a Christmas tree. Which, if you look that one up, it's from the tree's point of view, and it doesn't go well. It's almost, those two together.
I really thought you were saying Prevenge, which is about a pregnant woman who believes her new inborn infant is talking to her and telling her to kill people.
I was gonna say, I was like, ooh, prevenge. And I'm like, no, prevenge.
We had a blue card right at the back there.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on what Charlene was saying earlier about representation in horror. Latin American and Native American horror in novels specifically this year have been killing it.
White Horse, did you read White Horse?
No, but it's on my list.
Okay.
I read Stephen Graham Jones' latest in his trilogy,
Yes.
and then there's Lost Sisters, which is next on my list. So good. And then horror podcast, shout out No Sleep podcast. I'm an addict.
If I can recommend Stephen Graham Jones, anything by him is great. His My Heart is a Chainsaw.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
It's great.
All right, so we probably take one more question, and then we'll just do a roundup here. Right here, blue card.
Another question, there's just two more titles. And
Sure.
One is the movie Smile.
Oh,
There you go. I'm surprised that didn't come up.
And then as a series on what used to be called FX is now MGM
From, right, that just got renewed, I think. also.
It's just, yeah, that is pretty much.
Is that the one that's kind of like horror-inflected Lost? I want
It's
to
the
say.
same executive producer.
Oh,
And isn't
I wanna say
Harold,
that's
is
Harold
Harold
Cameron,
Cameron
which-
on it?
yeah. Oh.
I will follow him anywhere.
What was it called?
Great, so this is awesome. I think we covered a lot of great areas. Why don't we go quickly up and down the panel? You can say anything that you missed out on. Also, let us know where you're going to be for the rest of the con. Anne, why don't you start?
Okay, as I said before, if you find a source you trust for not gatekeeping, but sifting through all of the stuff that's coming out, they can usually not steer you wrong. Like, my husband reads sci-fi, but Locust has a best horror. So Barnes & Noble has best horror. Publishers Weekly. Or just find people who will sift through the stuff and recommend the best for you. So.
And where are you going to be for the rest of the
I'm at Tudors, 8:30 tomorrow, Fact or Fiction.
The book that I would recommend, that I've recently got a hold of, is Philadelphia. It is a graphic novel. It is very gross. I would recommend. The places I'm going to be tomorrow are Dressing for the Future at 9:30, Clothes Make the Being at 11, How to Be an Ally at 3:30. I'm hosting the Space Lounge BIPOC meetup at 5. And I'm going to be at the Did They Actually Like Kids panel at 4:30. And Retro Horror Retrospective at 10.
Nice.
Very nice.
Nice. I'm excited about Maxine, which is the latest in the trilogy from Ty West with X, Pearl, Maxine. Very excited about that. I love the fact that they're doing different genres of films happening there. I am going to be on a few of the panels. I will be joined by, and I'm out with names right now, sorry, and her name, And
Charlene?
So,
What if I change my badge
Charlene.
name to Skinner?
We'll be on the retro horror panel, and I know that's happening on Friday, and then I will be at a Universal Monsters panel at 11 a.m. Saturday, and then the Fear You Can Hear Horror Fiction podcast at 3:30.
Okay.
I'm gonna say something I'm looking forward to. I'm really hyped for the last voyage of the Demeter.
Oh my God! Yeah, thank you.
As we kind of go full circle on some of our Dracula content, I'm going to be at Two Perspective Fiction as well, at Retro Horror Retrospective on Friday night, and then at Fear You Can Hear on Saturday afternoon. So I'd love to talk about audio drama horror, both old and new, and maybe not where you would expect it.
Cool, and I'm going to be at the Year in Utrecht panel tomorrow, also Deaths That Killed Me panel, and on Saturday, the Enola Holmes panel. When I'm not in panels, I will probably be in the dealer's room at the FTP publishing table, and have my books. So please come and find us all, and thank you all so much for your great questions.
Thank you.
For being here so late.